So, guys, this is my beginner tank build for the Flames of Ambition DLC. Now, there's a lot of things changed with tank in this patch, so I have changed some things with the build. One of the main things has been one of the gear sets has changed. Now, the reason I changed the gear set is because of the health thing again. We've now got more base stats, more base health, so the increased health is not as necessary anymore. So last patch we were using Plague Doctor as like an easy option. It's easy to get. It's a good set to use that's like a beginner set. So when you're brand new at 160 CP, a good set to use is Plague Doctor to buff your health, give you that bit of leeway in certain things. This patch, it's not as necessary if you're going into a 7 heavy setup and you're also at like 200 CP, you're looking pretty good as well. So we're not actually needing it as much as we did before. We've changed that set. We've got a few different things as well, so we're just going to get straight into it. So, for a beginner tank, I have gone with, obviously, a Dragon Knight tank is always the class that I'm going to suggest for a beginner tank. If you're just starting the game, you want to get into tanking. If you've not got a tank and you want to start tanking, the easiest one to play is the Dragon Knight tank. Now, the reason for that is because of the sustain and because of the crowd control. So typically, if you're a newer tank, I'm not thinking about what you're going to do later in the game. I'm thinking about what you're going to do right now. At like low CP and low experience, the thing you're going to be doing is dungeons, arenas, leveling up, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not really thinking too much in the mindset of end game, like elite, hard mode, no death trials. That is not what we're doing here. We're trying to make an opinion based on the content you're going to be doing. So the reason why a Dragon Knight is so powerful for a beginner tank is because of how easy it is to unlock skills like Unrelenting Grip and Choking Talons. So they come very, very early on in the leveling process. They're very easy to use. They cost Magicka. It makes the Dragon Knight very strong. You've also got Green Dragon Blood, which is a very, very good burst emergency heal. Common problems with Green Dragon Blood is people use it too early and then they run out of resources. So you have to be very careful. But overall, the Dragon Knight provides a lot of benefits to yourself. So we've got the ultimate. When you use your ultimate, you gain a load of resources back. So the Battle Roar passive, you can use skills to get your stamina back. So in general, for a beginner tank, these are the reasons why I always say to go with a Dragon Knight. The Dragon Knight just provides the all-round support that they need for the group, and they provide the benefits that you need as an individual learning to tank. This is not to say, though, that you can't use a different class, because you absolutely can start tanking on a Necro, for example. A lot of people say, oh, I play Necro. Can I practice on a Necro because I find Dragon Knight a bit boring? Absolutely. The reason I say Dragon Knight is because it's quite basic and simple to play. What you see is what you get. It's very easy to play, very easy to get used to. And yes, that's the problem with it, is it can become a little bit boring because once you kind of know how to play a Dragon Knight, there isn't much more you can do with it. When you play a Necro, for example, Necros make very good tanks. They do make very good tanks, and even later in the game, they're very good off tanks. They're very good in content, but they're a little bit more tricky to play. They're not like impossible to play. I'm not saying that you can't play a Necro. I'm just saying they're a little bit more tricky than they are to play on a Dragon Knight. Beginner tanks block a lot more often, so people run out of stamina, because when you're a Dragon Knight, you can spam Igneous Shields, you can use your ultimate, you get all your resources back. On a Necro, you don't have that option of standing there perma-blocking and getting all of your resources back while blocking. You have to heavy attack, you have to use potions, you have to be active on a Necro. And the Necro playstyle is a little bit different from most of the classes, but you can play a Necro, you can learn on a Necro. You can play any class if you want to. They can all tank. Every class can tank. Some just more easy than others. Some are more difficult. Things like the Templar, you're going to struggle to learn to tank on a Templar, but you absolutely can play a Templar tank if you want to. The Nightblade tank. Problems with the Nightblade tank, they're absolutely useless in terms of their group support. They don't have a good CC, they don't have a good chain, they don't have any group buffs, they don't have a burst heal, they have a heal over time. But they are very strong at tanking. They're very strong at tanking. They can tank a lot of damage. They are good at tanking. So you kind of have to just kind of see where you're at, what you want to do. Play whatever you want. But if you want to play something that's going to be easy to play, then you are going to choose the Dragon Knight. In terms of the race of a new tank, you have got a few different options. I've gone with Argonian. And I think the Argonian is a strong option for a beginner player. You can use an Argonian even in endgame content as well. So if you want to start off, using an Argonian is a good idea because it gives you an extra bunch of stuff. So we've got increased bit of healing, we've got increased max health, and we've got increased magicka and stamina. So it's like 1,000 of each resource, which is fantastic. And then when you drink a potion, you get a bunch of resources back. So even if you did choose to be a Templar or a Nightblade or whatever, or a Necro, if you've gone Argonian, you are going to be able to get some resources back while blocking by using the resourceful passive. Use a potion, you get your potion resources back, you get the passive resources as well. So the Argonian is a strong option for beginner players. You can obviously use an Imperial. The only reason I haven't listed Imperial as my choice for a beginner player is because the Imperial, you have to buy it with crowns or buy it like separately. So typically, if you're just starting the game, you wouldn't want to choose an Imperial potentially for your first tank because you'd kind of want to see if you even like tanking, because the cost of an Imperial might not be worth it to you. So the best option is to kind of go, well, I'll choose Argonian, which is almost as good as an Imperial. And they've got all those extra stats and they get resources back with using that potion. So I just think Argonian is probably the easiest one to start with as well, just because it's possible to get resources back. Another good option would obviously be the Red Guard. We've mentioned this in the past, but like you get 12,000 stamina a minute while blocking with the Red Guard. So Red Guard, another strong option. For low CP players and that kind of thing, a Nord is a good option as well. So if you've got if you're a new tank and you just start and you've already made it, it's a Nord, that is fine as well. Nords are still quite good. They're just not as strong as they have been in the past, but you definitely can still play as a Nord, and they definitely help out at lower levels and lower CP. So my attributes on this Argonian, just so you know at the minute, I've only put 200 champion points into this character to kind of make it out as a beginner level tank. So I've not put like loads of points in. So these stats are based on 200 CP. So I put a few hundred CP, I've put like 10 points into health, I think it is. And I've put like 48 points into my recoveries. So this is kind of mimicking a beginner level player at low CP. So as you can see, 20k stamina, nearly 40k health. This is with tri-stat food, purple tri-stat food. We've got 21.5k max stamina, 1,338 magicka recovery. That is without a Munda Stone. I forgot to pick one up. So that'll go up a lot more as well. If we buff up with our resistance buff, 28k spell and 25k physical resistance. That is actually going to be quite okay. So those kind of resistances are going to work absolutely fine. For the level of content you're going to do as a beginner tank, 25k resistances is absolutely spot on. You don't need 33k resistances as a beginner tank because you are not going to be tanking hard mode trials as a beginner player. If you're going into Kind's Aegis hard mode at 200 CP, then yeah, then it's going to be a problem that you've only got 25k resistances. However, you're not going to do that. So 33k resistances you don't need 33k resistance as a beginner, because the level of stuff you're going to do, the dungeons, normal dungeons, vet dungeons that are on like the non-DLC side of things, they're not going to hurt enough to justify having those 33k resistances. So yeah, my attributes, I went 15 magicka, 24 into health and 25 into stamina. When you've got like higher CP, you'd probably just go all into health and then you'd use tri-stat on your gear. But this is designed for beginner players who probably can't afford tri-stat enchants. They probably can't afford to transmute gear. So this is I've gone with this setup because I wanted to have higher stamina than magicka, because if you don't do that, your resources are balanced out. So we've had to put a few points extra into stamina than magicka, but basically we've just spread everything out to make sure we've got a decent amount of resources overall. For the food, like I said, we're just using tri-stat food, purple tri-stat food. The Crown Fortifying Meals. These are the ones that you get. These are the ones that you get in your daily rewards. So one of the things you need to make sure you're doing is collecting your daily rewards, because daily rewards are very great for a tank. If we look at our daily rewards, within a month, you've got potions, tri-stat potions. These are tank potions that you should be using if you've got them spare. Like, there's no reason not to use them. They're as good as the crafted ones. They're very, very strong. They're as good as anything else that you can get. So tri-stat potions, we get those for free once a week. We also get the Crown Fortifying Meals once a week. So there is absolutely no reason not to pick up your daily rewards as a tank and use these things, because it's free. And you get it for free, and they're as good as everything else you can use. So make sure you're checking your rewards, collecting them daily, and getting those potions, getting that food, and making use of them as well. Because it's free, it's saving you a lot of money. If you're a DD, you wouldn't use them. If you're a healer, you wouldn't use them. So DDs and healers have to spend more money to get the stuff they need. And as a tank, we get it for free every single week. So make sure you're checking that out, guys. For the potions, like I said, potions. Crown Tri-Restoration Potions, basically tri-stat potions. They give you health, magicka, stamina, and they give you your recovery as well. Your stamina recovery, health recovery, magicka recovery. So we get a lot of recovery from using that. For my Mundustone, I would have gone the Atronach, but I forgot to pick it up. But yeah, the Atronach would be the one I'd use. As you can see, I'm on 1,300 mag recovery. With the Atronach, it's going to be about 1.5k. So you definitely want to go with the Atronach. There isn't really anything else worth using. We don't need a resistance one. You definitely don't need more health. There's not really anything else that we need enough. So Magicka Recovery is the way to go with your Mundustone. Right. Onto the gear. So this has changed a little bit for this patch, just because I don't see the need in getting Plague Doctor. So like I said before, we went with Plague Doctor last patch because, one, it's cheap to buy. You get it in purple for a couple of K. Really, really easy to set up. It's really helpful to have high health because it means you can make more mistakes and not die. And that is obviously useful when you're just starting off tanking. We've got rid of that now, and we've gone with the Cyrodiil's Crest set. So you can buy this extremely cheap on the guild traders because nobody uses it. This is going to be a set that keeps you alive if you struggle to stay alive. This is a good option to use in trials, when you're doing like normal trials and just starting out in trials and dungeons and all that kind of stuff. Now, the reason we use this set is after successfully blocking, which you're probably going to be doing quite a lot of, you can heal for 8k, well, 8,363 health every 4 seconds. So we're going to get the benefit of that little heal, and it gives us some nice stats as well. So we've got health. Stamina recovery is a little bit of a waste, but overall, not a bad set to use, because the reason we've gone with it is because I wanted a set that you don't have to farm and you can buy really cheap, and that's what this is. We don't need the massive health pool from Plague Doctor, so this is going to be the next best thing, if in my opinion, because we're going to get a heal. And we're going to use that on the weapons and the jewelry, because you don't want to have to craft weapons and jewelry. So we've got the one hand, the shield. The one-hander I've got infused with stamina, absorb stamina, because stamina recovery, you want that extra stamina coming in for your sustain. You're going to be blocking a lot as a beginner. That's a typical error that's made for beginner players, is a lot of blocking. For the shield, obviously sturdy, we've got a stamina enchant on there. On the back bar, Ice Staff. Ice Staff is the best staff to use for a beginner player. For a non-beginner player, Ice Staff is a tank weapon. I keep saying this. It's a tank weapon. It provides tank support, tank benefits, but it also increases group DPS if you use it at the right time and you hover on the Ice Staff bar. It also gives sustain to your group through some of the Destruction Staff passives. So Ice Staff is the option that you want to go with. And Infused Crusher. So the Infused Crusher staff is ideally what you would go with. Because you do want to, even though this is a beginner build, we do still want to practice using the Crusher enchant and stuff like that, because you don't want to completely lock yourself in that corner where you're only able to selfish tank. You want to be able to help your group a bit. So we've gone with the Infused Crusher, Ice Staff, Cyrodiil's Crest. For the monster set, we've got the Engine Guardian monster set. And this is the best sustained monster set you can possibly get. And it's just absolutely fantastic. So when you cast an ability, you've got a 25% chance to summon a Dwemer that gives you stamina, health, or magicka. And the reason why it's so good for a DK, especially for a Dragon Knight, is it doesn't matter what we get, we can convert that back into stamina. And stamina is always the most problematic resource to maintain. So if you've got the major skill balance, when you get in health, you can use balance to convert that into magicka, and then use Igneous Shield to convert it into stamina. If you get in magicka back, you can use balance to cast it into stamina. And if you get in stamina, that's the primary resource you want to get. Obviously, you don't have to do that. If you want to keep the magicka because you're spending a lot of magicka, you can do that as well. If you need to heal because you've not got much healing going on, it doesn't matter which way you look at it, this provides the best sustain because it's very, very active. It's always there. It's always proccing, it's always active in fights, and it provides you a hell of a lot of resources throughout a fight. So, we've gone with the heavy sturdy. It's got a health enchant on it because it's a big piece, and we're using that for this build. If you can't grab this, you could also go for an easier monster set such as Bloodspawn. That's a little bit easier to get. You could get the Sentinel of Rakugarm set. That's from Darkshade 1. This is from Darkshade 2. The Engine Guardian monster is a little bit trickier to get than the one on Darkshade 1. So you could get that before you can get this, because you can still get yourself a little bit of sustain from the Sentinel of Rakugarm set. But this one is the best one. For a beginner player, your biggest reason for dying is usually because you run out of resources. You run out of resources, you run out of stamina, you're unable to block, then you die. It's not the lack of healing, it's usually the lack of sustain that kills you. And when people go, I didn't have enough healing, or I died because I didn't heal myself, or whatever, it's usually because you took a big, big hit, because you ran out of stamina. And when you run out of stamina, your character sometimes might look like they're blocking, but they're not actually blocking. They have dropped their block. So we've got the best of both worlds here. We've got the sustain from Engine Guardian, and we've got the healing from Cyrodiil's Crest. So we've got two sets, one providing sustain, one providing heals. And then we move on to our next set, which is Seducer. So the reason we use this is because on a Dragon Knight, everything is so bloody expensive. Everything is so expensive. Like every skill is 4k plus of magicka. So it's a weird situation because a Dragon Knight's the best for sustain, but then all of their skills are super expensive. So the way we combat this is by going with Seducer, and this is the first set you also get rid of. So once you've got good at sustaining on all sides of things, you don't need to use Seducer anymore. But it's a crafted set, and it's the most useful crafted set because it reduces the cost of your magicka abilities by 10%. It also gives you magicka recovery, and magicka. So this is a fantastic way to kind of help yourself sustain on a Dragon Knight with those skills that all cost 4k. So your chains is really expensive, your talons is expensive, your heal, your Igneous Shield, they're all really expensive. But they're not as expensive if you're using this set. So we go with Seducer. So obviously, like I said before, the reason why we're going with these options, they're easy to get, they're cheap to buy, or they're craftable, they're easy. It's all about grabbing stuff that's easy. We're not trying to get a meta build going here. This is a beginner tank build that's easy to obtain. So we've got, well, all of this is health enchants. Look, we've got a health enchants. The gear is all in heavy. It's all heavy, it's all sturdy. If you've watched my most recent YouTube video, you'll understand why that is. So heavy armor provides you with better sustain than 511. Heavy armor provides you with more damage mitigation. Heavy armor gives you more health. It gives you so much more. So 7 heavy is better than 511 for this patch. Full sturdy is better than using infused this patch because infused only increases your overall stats by an extra couple of hundred, but block cost seems to be a lot more difficult with this Flames of Ambition DLC. So I've gone with full sturdy, and that seems to be so much better because we've got more resources overall now. Our base levels of resources have increased, so why would we use infused to get like 200 more stamina? It's not worth it. It's really not worth it because by using the extra 3 sturdy pieces on the chest, the legs, and the head, we actually reduce our stamina usage by over 150 stamina while blocking. So that is far more important, where we can reduce so when you're holding your shield up and blocking an attack, if you're getting hit by 2 enemies and they're hitting every 2 seconds, so every 4 seconds you're losing like 1,500 stamina. That is a lot of stamina to be draining and draining and draining. If you then switch to infused, that is increased even more. So you could be losing 2,000 stamina every couple of seconds by blocking a couple of ads. So we're trying to get that block cost down as little as we can. because the benefit of that is we use less stamina and we're able to sustain fights for longer and have less worries about where we're going with it. On the jewelry is healthy because that's the trait that it comes in. I've not trait changed it because I don't expect beginner players to have a lot of transmute crystals to go along trait changing their gear. We're using 1 bracing and 2 magicka recovery. If you are comfortable with your blocking, you could switch the bracing to a 3rd magicka recovery. But it all depends. Magicka recovery is only really valuable if you're not using the balance skill from the Mages Guild. If you're using the balance skill from the Mages Guild, that gives you magicka. So that is a good way of sustaining as well. So you don't need as much magicka recovery, and you don't need to worry about the cost of your magicka skills if you use balance. So if you go and get the Mages Guild skill balance, that means you can then switch Seducer to a better set. So you could use this build to go and do normal Sunspire and start farming Yolnahkrin, and then as soon as you get the balance skill, your sustain's going to be easier, so then you take off Seducer and you switch it for Yolnahkrin. Yolnahkrin's a group buff set, and then you're becoming more of a useful tank. So it's all about the process of development as well. This is the starting point where you go and farm gear that's better and more group benefits and stuff like that. And you work that in later once you've kind of got comfortable and you've got the skills that improve that situation and all that kind of stuff. So that's the gear, guys. We've gone, so Cyrodiil Crest, weapons and jewelry, crafted Seducer on the body, and the Engine Guardian monster set. All heavy, all sturdy, all health. And that's that for the gear. For the skills are pretty basic. There isn't really much leeway in terms of your skills for a beginner. Pierce Armor number 1. This is the must-have taunt. This is your main taunt, your only real taunt that's worth using. You get Minor Breach and Major Breach. It's a group debuff. You're using quite selfish gear in this setup, and you don't need to worry about that as a beginner player. However, you do want to use skills that are beneficial to your group. So Pierce Armor, you need to use that because it's beneficial to your group. It keeps taunting the enemy. You need to recast it every 14 seconds. And you are inflicting some kind of group benefit as well. So it's a good skill to use for 2 reasons, obviously. The taunt and the debuff. Heroic Slash, it's both a useful skill for your group and yourself. So you gain minor heroism, which means you get your ultimate faster. On a Dragon Knight, you want to get your ultimate as fast as possible. When you use your ultimate, you gain your resources back. So it is a heavy priority. It's a big priority to get your resources, to get your ultimate back as fast as possible, so then you can use it as often as possible and get your resources back. So this will help with doing that, with the minor heroism. It also does minor maim, which reduces the damage enemies do by 5%. And that is the damage they do to everybody. So if you've got an enemy that does like an area attack, if you've got it debuffed with minor maim, your allies will also take 5% less damage from it. So it's a good thing for both yourself and your group. Igneous Shield is the next skill. This is a great skill for yourself and your group again. It gives you a shield. With this particular set, we're getting an 8.5k shield, and our group's getting a 3.5k shield. So you can pretty much... This is what you want to spend your magicka on as much as you can. Every time you cast this, you will also get a 990 stamina back through your passives that give back resources when you use this particular ability. So it's great. It also gives a group buff to stamina players, and it gives you a shield, your group a shield, and it gives you major mending. So what you want to do is, instead of spamming your heals to heal yourself, is you want to spam Igneous Shield instead, because Igneous Shield has got so many uses. You never want to spam Green Dragon Blood. It's such a massive waste of resources. It's nearly 4k magicka, even with Seducer and all this kind of gear on. What you do want to do is you want to spam Igneous Shield, because Igneous Shield's going to give you so much more. It gives you your stamina back, it gives you all those things. And then what you do is, if you do go low health while you've got your Igneous Shield active, and then you use your Green Dragon Blood, it's going to buff it, because you've got major mending, which means it increases your healing, so then your Green Dragon Blood is going to heal for more. So never spam Green Dragon Blood. Use Green Dragon Blood at low health. That is the priority when you use it under 50%, and you get a real big boost to healing. But you want to use Igneous Shield first, and that's the way to play it. We use Hardened Armor, and this gives us a major resolve buff. It gives us a damage shield. You want to drop this as soon as you can and get the skill Balance instead. Balance is a much better skill. This is just the skill that you would use to start with, but you want to use Balance. The only problem with Balance is it costs health to use it, and people get a bit scared of that. But when you've actually got a real healer in your group, it doesn't matter. You lose a little bit of health. When you've got 40k health like we have with this build, losing 5k health to get back 3000 magicka is not a problem. So you just need to time it. So after a heavy attack, you heal up and then you use balance. After a big mechanic, you heal up and then you balance. So that's kind of the process. But with this, you can use this at any time. This gives you your major resolve, and that's just something you're going to use as a stopgap until you can get balance. Magma Shell is just kind of a safety ultimate. At this kind of level, you might need a safety ultimate. You're in a really sticky situation. People in your group are dead. Your healer's dead. People are dead. Because you're most likely going to be in groups that might go through those sort of situations. So use Magma Shell to kind of get through that and kind of help you stay alive and not die. Okay, on the back bar, we've got the Inner Rage skill. This is from the Undaunted skill line, so you will need to get this unlocked. But this is a ranged taunt, and ranged taunts are very, very useful and much needed in this sort of content. Next, we've got Choking Talons. This is the start of your kind of crowd control skill. Very good skill. It roots the enemy in place, and that's important so that the enemies can't get to your group and they can't kill your allies. You don't want your group members to take any damage if possible. So you use Talons to root the enemies in place. And it works really good because when you chain an enemy, you can chain them and also Talons them. Some other classes can't do that. We're going to go over this a bit more in a little while. But basically, if you use like a fear skill, if I was to chain an enemy and then use a fear skill, it wouldn't do anything. You can't fear an enemy that you've just chained. And that's the problem with a lot of kind of classes, is they don't have a pull, a chain skill, and then a root skill that's like an immobilization. Other skills don't work as well. Blockade of Frost is why we're using it. Well, we have an infused Crusher enchant on the back bar. And the way that we keep this active on the enemy at all times is by keeping down Blockade on the ground always. So we're able to tank on the Ice Staff. We're able to spot a bar swap and tank heavy attacks, tank mechanics on the Ice Staff because it's a tank weapon. So this means it's really safe for you to keep down that Blockade all the time. You can bar swap, block attacks, cast your Blockade, try and keep it down as much as possible. This is one of the first major debuffs that you should be trying to learn to maintain as a beginner player. So obviously, once you've learned to taunt the enemy and keep yourself alive, the first kind of thing that you want to learn to do after that is making sure you've got your Blockade on the ground, and that is a group benefit. It debuffs the enemy, it means your allies do more damage. So that for me is like the first thing you should try and learn to do as a tank, is just keep that Blockade down on the ground as much as possible, keep that Crusher as active as possible, and really, really help you support your group in that kind of way. The next skill is Cinderstorm. Now, this is a flex skill. You can switch this and use something else if you want to. It's quite an expensive skill, but it is a heal for yourself and your group. So you place it under yourself, and the reason why I advise you to use this as a beginner player is when you start a fight, you can put it underneath your feet, and then you don't need to worry about your health as much, and you use less Green Dragon Bloods, and you can focus more on chaining and talons in enemies because you place this under yourself, you've got a constant heal every second, and you don't have to worry as much about the damage that you're taking. You can focus more on chains and talons and that kind of thing, the crowd control of the enemies, and less worrying about your health. And oh shit, my health's dropping low, I need to heal, and then you're wasting time healing and less time tanking enemies and less time stacking things up. So that's kind of the reason why I use that. However, like I say, you can switch it for something else, and this is probably the first skill to go. Once you've got something that's more useful, you drop this and use something else. Last main skill, Unrelenting Grip. So Unrelenting Grip is a chain. It pulls the enemy to you. As long as the enemy hasn't gone through some other crowd control recently, you can chain the enemy in, and that will pull them towards you. So this is how you kind of stack enemies during ad pulls and dungeons and arenas, and you want to get all the enemies stacked up nicely so that your damage dealers can kill them all faster. So you need chains, you pull them in with chains, then you talons them into place, and then your group can put all the damage in one spot and you just absolutely tear it apart. Last skill for the build is the Aggressive Horn. So this is the only ultimate that you should use as much as you can. So on the other bar we had Magma Shell, which is an emergency skill that you use in an absolute worst case situation. You use it to stay alive. But the ultimate that you always want to use is Aggressive Horn. And this is good for yourself and your group again. It will increase your maximum magicka and stamina by 10%. So you got more stats by using this. And other people in your group should be using it as well. Other tanks and healers will have to use this as well. This is the only ultimate worth using. And it's a group buff as well. It gives you group major force, increasing their critical damage. And it's valuable for you to be buffing your group. If you don't buff your group at all, then fights take longer. You have to tank for longer. There's more chance to make mistakes, more chances of you dying. So you want to be buffing your group. Even as a beginner player, you need to do some buffs, or else you will cause a problem for yourself as well. Without buffing your group, they do less damage. If they do less damage, the fights drag out for much, much longer. You have to play perfectly to be able to not make mistakes and not die. So it's just easier for yourself to be using skills like this that are going to benefit your group. For the passives, you don't need any passives from Ardent Flame, really. You can save these skill points because these are damage buffing skills. You don't need to use them really at all. You want to take everything from Draconic Power, everything from Earthen Heart, everything from your one-handed shield. Destruction Staff, you don't want to use Trifocus. You don't have to take Penetrating Magic, but you do want to have Ancient Knowledge. Elemental Force, you can use, but it's not important until later on. And then Destruction Expert is okay because you will get resources back. When you use your Frost Blockade, it gives you a shield. And if that shield gets consumed, you get Magicka back. So you can use that as well. You don't need light and medium armor passives because you're not using light and medium armor. We're only using heavy. And you want to go full points into heavy. Everything you can. Like you see here, we've got 7 heavy on. So we've got 2,402 more resistances by wearing 7 heavy. The Constitution passive is massive. With 7 heavy, every 4 seconds when we take damage, we gain 757 resources back. Massive amount of resources. Most bosses hit between 3 and 4 seconds, like every 3 and 4 seconds. So in a boss fight, you're almost getting back the stamina you got from blocking every time from the Constitution passive with 7 heavy. So very, very good. The Juggernaut passive increasing max health by 14%. That's always nice as well. That's why we don't need to worry about 5-on-1 and stuff, because we've got so much health already by the 14% from this. Revitalize passive, increase magicka and stamina by heavy attacks. So 28% more resources back. So when you do a heavy attack, you're going to get 28% more stamina and magicka back because we're wearing 7 heavy. So this is why the heavy armor, going 7 heavy, is more beneficial than going 5-on-1. You get so much more resources back. You get all that 28% more back from heavy attacks, and an extra 214 back every 4 seconds from this. So you just don't need to run 5-on-1. The benefit of the Undaunted passives now is less worth it than just going 7 heavy. So 7 heavy is much more valuable in terms of sustain, in terms of damage mitigation, in terms of everything. It's just much better. The benefit of the extra 4% resources, if you look at that, like we've shown our stats already, this is without the Undaunted passive. We've already got a lot of stats. If we switch to our front bar, sorry. We've got nearly 40k health, 21k, 21.5k stab, 20k magicka. We don't need that extra 4%. Like, by getting that extra 4%, we're going to lose a lot of sustain. We're going to lose sustain for extra stats. Sustain is a bigger problem than stats. Like, if you can't sustain, it doesn't matter if you've got, like, 10k more stats. If you can't sustain, it's going to be a bigger problem. So that's why we go 7 heavy and we utilize these things as well. We do get the armor bonuses, so we can block 7% more damage from physical attacks, from poison attacks, all that kind of stuff. We can block the amounts of damage we can block by 7%. All damage is blocked by an extra 7% now in 7 heavy, and then yeah, we can increase damage done by bashing. We have got armor penalties, but they're absolutely not worth talking about. Increased damage from magical attacks. It's not a noticeable, like, you don't take more magic damage this patch than last patch. In 7 heavy, you take less magic damage now than you did last patch, so it's irrelevant. You don't need to worry about that. The biggest problem is probably the reduced movement speed. The reduced movement speed is a bigger problem than the increased magic damage. The increased cost of dodge roll is a bigger problem than the increased magicka damage. So ignore the increased magic damage taken. That is irrelevant. It doesn't actually mean you take more damage. It just means that in heavy, you take more than you do against physical attacks, but you still take less than you did last patch, and you still take less than wearing light armor as well. So ignore everything that anyone's told you about it, and that is the facts that you need to know about light armor, heavy armor, and the magical attack penalty. Other passives that you need, you don't really need anything from there. Like I said before, Mage's Guild, you want to get balance as soon as you can and start using that instead. And then when you use that, you want to get the 3 middle passives, these 3 here. So Mage Adept, Everlasting Magic, and Magic Controller. You don't really need the other 2. You can get them if you want. Undaunted, you can still take the Undaunted passives, but you're only going to get a 2% benefit from that. And you do get resources back, extra resources from your intelligence as well, so it's worth it by picking up that one. So definitely take those. And then Assault and Support, Continuous Attack, grab that because you gain Major Gallop, which means when you mount up, 30% more speed every time you mount up. That's worth grabbing. Razor Caltrops is a skill that you can use to replace your Cinderstorm if you want something that's going to provide you with even more crowd control. So Razor Caltrops is a good replacement for that. And then on your support skills, I mean, we're not using any support on we're not using any support skills on this particular setup, but you could use Barrier on your front bar ultimate if you don't want to use Magma Shell anymore, and then slot the Magicka Raid passive for 10% more Magicka recovery. And then obviously all of your Argonians as well. Alchemy, medicinal use, you'd want to pick up that so that your potions last longer. And that's all for the passives. All of the CP is on the Tank Club Discord. So I've slotted 200 CP for this particular build. I've just got points into the main thing. So you need to look at the website for the champion points, but the main thing is preparation is the #1 thing. I've put 40 points into preparation. That's giving you the most damage reduction out of all the CP. That's the priority one to pick up. And then in the red CP, the priority really for a beginner is rejuvenation for the recoveries so that you can sustain better. Once you've got rejuvenation, the next priority is to pick up fortification, because that is a massive, massive damage reduction as well. So by the time you're at about 200-300 CP and you've got the fortification passive and stuff, you all are in a very, very good position in terms of your ability to tank. And that is it for the beginner tank build, guys.